welcome everyone. So our session is building and nurturing a culture of inclusion. It's going to be a panel-based session, so we're going to be running through a number of questions and going for answers between us in the panel, giving our advice and expertise for how we see these questions being answered. And then hopefully we'll allow a little bit of time at the end for you to ask any questions of anyone in the panel. So I think it might be useful for us to start by just introducing ourselves, just so you know who we are and where we're coming from. So I'll start by introducing myself. So my name's Kirsty Hill and I work for a company called Phoenix Software, and we are a Microsoft partner. My role is in the customer success team and I'm the accessibility lead. I'm a former primary school teacher, so really passionate about accessibility and inclusion and equality for all, making sure that both students and staff, and I'm not just talking about in education, but across all types of businesses, have that access to digital tools that can support them in their roles. So I'll hand to you, Antonio, to introduce yourself.
I'm Antonio, and good to meet everybody. I'm the founder of Tech Week Humber. Really excited to be here. Thank you.
Cool. I'm David Brown. I'm head of customer success at Phoenix. So similar to Kirsty, working across the public sector, helping support organisations become more inclusive using the accessibility tools from Microsoft.
And I'm Naomi Busettil and I work at Phoenix as well. I work in the marketing team, but I'm also our diversity, equality and inclusion network lead. And that was quite a mouthful.
Fab, so I'm going to kick us off with the first question. So what accessibility requirements are needed in workspaces to ensure inclusion for all? And I'm going to come to you first, David.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of regulations there to support organisations in terms of becoming more accessible. I think my challenge to most organisations and individuals is to focus less around those legislations and those rulings or the things that are obvious, like wheelchair ramps or wider doors or hearing aid loops, and real focus on the hidden disabilities, because often they're quite overlooked and quite missed quite easily. I think if we're inclusive by design, as organisations or as individuals, we build a more inclusive workforce for people to access the services and access the services that you provide, but also the employees that work there to feel like they can have a conversation around their own accessibility needs or their own requirements, because often it's hidden because we feel like we can or we shouldn't. Or even myself, for years I hid my own accessibility needs. I'm dyslexic, severely dyslexic, but work in tech and speak at events all the time, but using and having an open platform to be able to share experience, share resources, and build a network within your organisation where it's open to talk about these things is really useful. And I think the other thing that I'd mention is the inclusive by design piece. Obviously, a lot of us make fixes to accessibility, so we'll build a ramp, or we might add in a hearing aid loop, or we might provide a tool or a piece of technology to support an individual that has a certain need. I think what we should really be thinking is at that point of creation, so the services that we're offering to the public, making sure that by default they're automatically thought with inclusion and accessibility in mind. If you think of curbs, for example, and we all use curbs and the dips in curbs to push our trolleys or to carry our suitcases or to easily access services that we need to access, or to get up if you're carrying your suitcase up the sidewalk. That was a bit American. But they were actually first introduced in just after the Second World War in the US to help injured veterans, and now it's something, because it was provided with accessibility in the design, it's something that we all benefit from. And I think there's a lot to learn from that in terms of our own organisations by adding accessibility at the point of creation or the point of providing a service. It means that we all get to benefit from some of those successes.
Anything to add? So yeah, I think that leads us into the next question. So looking at some of the digital tools that can help build inclusive workplaces. So David's obviously talked about that kind of inclusion for all, inclusion by design, and that feeds really into those digital tools that we know as a Microsoft partner are embedded and added in. So I don't know if you want to talk first, David, and then I. I can add.
Yeah, sure. It's not just David Chill today. I think there's lots of resources that are there that can support organizations. Certainly, Microsoft are keen to support organizations that want to become digitally enabled to support their users and their customers with accessibility tools. Some of the ones that we work with on a daily basis are looking at stuff like neurodiversity, learning tools, hearing tools, that are all part of the Microsoft product stack. So if you have children with an accessibility need, it's for free of charge for those to access those services, and reach out to us. I think details will be provided afterwards if you do need any additional resources to support your own organization or yourself as an individual or your family members. But more importantly, I think it's about skilling up your workforce to be able to understand more around accessibility and then understand how they can support employees and customers.
And so when we're talking about the digital tools, we're not talking about additional costs. So these are the tools embedded into M365 that hopefully as a majority of businesses you're potentially using already. So using Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and actually they're quite hidden. So it's not always obvious that those tools are there. Now that's both a benefit to the tool as well in talking about that inclusion for all. So rather than someone, for example, in your workplace who is dyslexic having to come and say, can I have these accessible tools to help me do my day-to-day role? They can utilize a tool like Immersive Reader embedded into 365 and use that tool independently. It also means that they can communicate and collaborate with their colleagues without needing separate additional ways to access it. So accessing the same document at the same time, working collaboratively, but being able to identify and use their own accessible needs. So things like using a coloured overlay, larger font size, or even translation. And what we find with these tools is that they are there for accessibility. They are there and designed to support children in education or people in the workplace, but they actually lend themselves towards productivity as well in your workforce. So by incorporating these tools and raising awareness of the tools, absolutely you're helping to ensure that there's inclusion for all across your businesses, ensure that every colleague, every student, if you're in the education workspace, can access their work or their learning. But also what you're enabling them to do is to actually be more productive. So being able to work flexibly, to be able to have my text read aloud to me, or even proofread my own work, being able to use a tool like dictation to dictate emails or dictate policy documents. So really helping that fluidity across the business, not just from an accessibility point of view, but also from productivity as well.
Yeah. I use them on a daily basis for my dyslexia, so some of the tools like dictation service or the read aloud functionality, but it's not just for that. I'm also quite lazy, so just having that ability to voice to text dictate speeds my day up significantly, not just because it automatically has the editing tools in to help support with reading and writing, but just that fluidity of being able to speak as opposed to text handwritten. And again, similarly, many organizations have teams where you might be producing bids or tenders or large volumes of text. Having that capability to have something that you've produced read back to you really easily in a natural language voice, as opposed to the robotic voices that we've probably seen on other voice to text services, is really useful just to get the tone of the document that's been created.
So we'll move into the next question now. So why is workplace inclusion so important? I'm going to come to Naomi first for that one.
So I think there's lots of reasons why workplace inclusion is really important. I think at a very basic level, it's because everybody has the right to feel included, to feel comfortable in the workplace. And I think that that's just a basic human right. And that's not just in the workplace as well, it's just in life in general, in any kind of space, socially, anywhere. But I also think workplace inclusion is really important for businesses to take note of, and that is because if your staff feel included, if they feel comfortable at work, if their needs are met, then you're going to get so much more out of them. They're going to be more productive, you're going to retain members of staff as well, like you're not going to lose them. If people do feel uncomfortable at work, they're likely to leave and find somewhere else where the needs are being met. So I think that that's really the reason why. There's so much that you could go into with that. I think it's quite a big topic. But yeah, just at a basic level, I think everybody deserves the right.
Thank you. Now looking at why is representation, setting goals and transparency around diversity, equality, inclusion so important in the workplace? I'm going to come to you, Antonio.
Thank you. I think one of the most important things is accountability. I think, nowadays you go out and look at a lot of people advertising about diversity and inclusion. It's just a tick box exercise, right? I think there's a lot more that we need to be doing in order to make that more accountable. Businesses are putting this in their policies and tick box. Okay, how many people have I got? What's the quota? But actually, they're not really looking within themselves and say, okay, how are we holding ourselves accountable? How are we making it accessible? So that's really kind of one of the biggest things that I see at the moment. And I speak to a lot of businesses on a daily basis that they're trying to really do it really hard, but then it becomes about pleasing the shareholders. But actually, you have to be accountable, right? You've got to make people sure that they're included. And, even from like when you're hiring and recruiting, that is so important. I think accountability is number one. And the other thing is, as you probably touched upon as well, is actually, an inclusive workforce is very profitable. So as a business, I start looking, okay, how creative are we? How much have we got in terms of, different experiences in life, to help with creativity, to help with profitability? Because usually if you're a small business, right, you're always thinking, can I really afford to be inclusive? How am I going to make it happen? But accountability is very important for me, but actually it does affect your bottom line. I think that's really quite important. Yeah.
Okay, so moving along from that line into how can we as organisations improve our digital skills? So we've talked a lot about having access to those digital skills, but how can we improve them in the workforce, and why are these skills key now? So come to you, David.
Yeah. I think, well, all of us, we've moved into a digital world where whatever service we provide, whatever industry we work in, and I think it's quite important to know, especially the work that we do, we work across all of the public sector. So during the pandemic, it was enabling workforces to be able to access the same services that they access on a daily basis in a remote environment. And I think lots of people can quite easily be left behind, because if I'm a nurse or if I'm a mental health assessor and I've signed up for that job, I've not signed up to be a nerd, I've not signed up to work in tech. I think what we need to do as organisations is become more aware of that and ensure that we're showing the outcomes, as opposed to just focusing on this is a new tool and this is the way that we now expect you to go and work. And I think by doing that, it just builds a nature of where people feel more comfortable in the learning and simplify the applications. Many of us use applications in all of our roles in different organisations where it's so complex, and by simplifying that to a level of the needs of the individual or the services that someone needs to provide, you can provide a much better service. And I know that that's not always possible because some of these systems are legacy. And in addition to that, Microsoft have lots of resources. We provide training and resources around digital skills and digital literacy. Microsoft offer them at no cost, so you can just go to just search for Microsoft Education and you'll be able to see all of the resources that are there. And then similarly for ourselves, if you did want any support in digital skills, reach out.
And just to add to that, as David said, you could have a workforce that actually might be not confident using those digital tools, and just kind of spending that bit of time with them as a colleague, as a friend, and just going through, well, did you know that there was this tool that could help you with that? You can increase the font size, you can have it read aloud, you can dictate, can just make them feel more at ease with not being bombarded by the digital tools and technology. And that goes across all different workforces. So as David said, you might have signed up to a role and thinking there isn't a real need for me in my role to be able to use digital tools. But obviously, as we've all seen through and at the other side of the pandemic, our roles have changed, but that doesn't mean that your staff will automatically be confident in just picking up and adding digital technology into their role. So giving them that time or that training, or giving them the resources to train themselves can be really important, in again making them feel confident and not kind of almost that because the role has gone more digital, they feel now not included within their role or kind of behind their colleagues. So it's not just thinking about bringing people new into the workplace, it's thinking about your existing workforce as well and how you can support them with needs. And sometimes that is just being new to the use of technology as well. It's not always about needing those additional accessibility needs as well.
I think as well, just on that as well, and when we're talking about DEI, I think digital skills are so important to actually ensure that most people feel welcome in the workplace, and it helps with like accessibility needs, like if you think about parental leave and stuff as well, or like caring for children, it can make people feel included in the workplace because they might need to like do remote working or hybrid working, for example, and digital skills are so important for that, for maintaining that collaboration. Or, you know, if somebody has like an accessibility need and they need to work from home, for example, they're going to need those digital skills to ensure that they can do that. And that's another reason why it's so important.
And leading on from what Naomi said, that's continuity of the job roles as well. So making sure that all of the team are up to date with project work or with the business as a whole, but there's no requirement on I need to be in the office or I need to be in this place at this time to do that. They can work flexibly. And I think that's the biggest benefit for everyone that's come out of the pandemic is the ability to work flexibly. But it's just ensuring that continues to work within your business, within your workforce, so that there is that element of inclusion. So thinking about the modern workplace changing with regards to diversity, equality and inclusion, what are candidates, employees now looking for from their employers? I'll come to you, Antonio.
Thank you. I think, I'll keep on sticking to this theme. For me, it's like people can see through a lot of things nowadays. They're looking, how real is it? How real is your company? Is it really diverse? Do you know what I mean? I think there's a really big thing around candidates. If you're looking for a job, they're not just going to look at the job description. They're going to go on your website. They're going to go on your Twitter and all your accounts. See actually how diverse is it? What are your policies? What are you doing within the culture for the business before they make any decisions? I mean, it doesn't all come down to, okay, how much money, more money I'm going to get. It's actually, okay, am I going to be in the right team? Am I going to feel welcome? Is it diverse enough for me? So these are decisions that, specifically in tech, a lot of people are making those decisions. And I think it's quite important to know this. And when you're advertising a job, when you're putting it out, it's a very inclusive job. It's like, I've seen some horrific job posts, to be honest with you, where they put like, age or not age of this, age related and that. It's like, oh my God, you can't do that. Do you know what I mean? So how well are you advertising your jobs? How are you actually attracting talent? These are really key things, and I think people will see through that and they'll look at your culture and you just go on Glassdoor. Do you know what I mean? You can easily see or know what people are talking about the business, so which is really key.
Yeah, and I think to add on that, it kind of links in with the themes that we started with. Diversity, equality, inclusion shouldn't just be an add-on at the end of the advert. Oh, I best include that, or a tick box, or we want it to be embedded into the culture of our organisation, so that it's, as you say, it's not seen through. It's not just they actually have said that, but are they doing it at the heart of the business? So the final question we're going to come to, and it's a point we probably haven't touched upon yet, and we definitely don't want to be forgotten within this. So do diversity, equality and inclusion and mental health go hand in hand? And if so, how? I'll come to you first, Naomi.
Yeah, I think going back to when we were talking about workplaces being inclusive, they absolutely do go hand in hand. And I think that if you don't have that workplace inclusion, it's going to lead people to feel challenged in the workplace, and that can have a negative impact on mental health and well-being, and then that's going to have a negative impact on your business. It's going to have a negative impact on your workforce, your productivity, your employee retention rates, recruitment, all those kind of things. And mental health and well-being, it's a serious topic, and it can affect people physically as well. So you're going to have sickness within the business and things like that. So I absolutely think it goes hand in hand. I think if people feel comfortable and included and represented at work, then they're going to be much happier coming to work, with their work, in the business in general. And I'm not saying that covering DEI and making sure that there's real change in a business is going to completely eradicate mental health and well-being challenges, but I do think that it is one thing to take off somebody's mind. If they can go to work and be happy and, you know, get through the day without facing lots of challenges, then it's just one thing that they can kind of like tick off the list, and it's not going to present more challenges.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, we've talked a lot about digital tools and technology, and for some people that actually can add an element of mental health and wellbeing load. The digital burnout is kind of been a big key thing that's been talked about post-pandemic. But thinking of the Microsoft stack and the tools we work with and work with our customers with on a daily basis, they've been developed now to include that element towards mental health and well-being. So as a part-time worker, can I actually make sure that I am switching off on the days I don't work? Can I have that focus time when I'm in the office or working from home and I need to just concentrate on a project? And what you'll see is the tools are lend themselves to ensure that you touch out when needed, take those breaks, have that focus time, work during your hours. So you'll see things, if you are using the Microsoft stack, start to just appear for you, where it'll prompt you to send an email during working hours for colleagues. It'll prompt you to make sure you're taking a break or to have that focus time. And so absolutely, it's thinking about, yes, we want to have these digital tools, this technology at our fingertips to support diversity, equality, inclusion, but keeping in mind that mental health and well-being, making sure our workforce isn't overloaded or overwhelmed or burnt out through the use of it, and has that in mind as well.